Hello, I'm Matt, and I'd like to welcome you to the channel. This channel is dedicated to inspiring others to live a healthier and happier and yes, lighter lifestyle. I wrote about my weight loss of 70 pounds in a book that I called Deciding for Life: How I Lost 70 Pounds Without Working Out and While Still Eating the Foods That I Love. And today's video is going to be over Chapter 12, which is Morning Routine, a system that keeps me motivated. But before we get started, I'm going to go throw this backpack on that's got 70 pounds of lead in it and take you for a 1 mile walk, or woods walk, through on our property here and discuss Chapter 12 with you. So let's get started and let me get this backpack on. Okay, but before we get started, I have to give a quick disclaimer. I am not a medical professional, and I give no medical advice. My whole goal with this channel, and with my book, Deciding for Life: How I Lost 70 Pounds Without Working Out and While Still Eating Foods That I Love, is to inspire others to find a healthy way, and not necessarily the Deciding for Life way, but a healthy way to get their weight to a healthier level, because you will feel so awesome like I do. I've lost 70 pounds, and it is just... It's indescribable about how much better that you actually feel when you lose a substantial amount of weight. But if you see anything in my videos, or from reading my book, that you're interested in trying, ensure you speak with your doctor, consult with them, because something that is healthy for me may not be healthy for you. Something that works for me may not work for you. But the whole goal is for you to decide for your life to find a healthy and happier and yes, lighter way to live your lifestyle so you can feel as awesome as I do. Okay, now on to Chapter 12 of my book. My morning routine starts out pretty much the same every morning. And to me that makes life a lot simpler, because if I have a routine that I go through, then I really don't have to think about it that much. And that's one thing about systems and routines that I think works really well. I get up at 5:45 in the morning, every morning, even on my cheat day, and I have a little bit of me time. I read two pages out of my Bible to reinforce the knowledge that I have in the Bible and learn something new every day. Then one of the other things I do is I take and weigh myself. Now I know with a lot of diet programs, they teach you that you don't want to weigh yourself but maybe once a week, and some of them talk about not even weighing yourself at all, and just using measurements. But I'm kind of a numbers guy. So the numbers that I use, weight is weight is the simplest thing to look at. And it's an easy gauge to see if I'm getting where I want to get to. So I weigh myself every morning and check my blood pressure and keep those things logged so that I know if there's anything that's changed drastically, with my blood pressure. And I can see and make small adjustments to what I eat so that I can control my weight better. And then I go spend a little bit of time, which is my time, or me time, and typically one of the things that I do that helps motivate me is I found some inspirational people on YouTube that I like to watch that inspire me each morning, through their positive thought processes and, encouraging words. And the one that I watch most is Myron Golden. And when I first started watching his videos, he just had his normal Myron Golden website, or his YouTube channel. Now he has his Myron Golden YouTube channel, and then his Myron Golden Bible Study YouTube channel. And the interesting thing about Myron is he teaches business from a biblical perspective, which I'd never seen anybody do before. But it's really helpful to me, because I don't think you've probably ever seen anybody that, preaches from a positive perspective about business. In today's society, and most of the people that we deal with today, businesses are evil. It's pretty much what they like to teach you, but the reality is businesses are biblical. And you can't go to a much better source for trying to do things the right way than getting back to the Bible. So I sit down and I watch one of his videos, usually a half hour, 45 minutes. Some days I have to mix them up a little bit because, I don't always get all of my necessities done at exactly the same time every morning. But it is one nice thing about YouTube is when I click on it, I can start watching it, watch as much as I can that day, and then pick up the next day where I left off so that I can get all of the content that I want to get. But typically, I watch somebody that picks me up in the morning. And that I find helpful to me because when I have a morning with a good start, the day seems to go a lot better. And having some me time and getting that good start in the first place in the morning, to me is very helpful. After I watch my motivational YouTube videos in the morning, I typically go and I make breakfast. And I make breakfast for me and my sweetheart. And I do this while she's sleeping because I do need some me time in the morning so that I can keep my motivation and keep going working on the things that I'm working on. So I typically make breakfast, and typically for now, for me that's a 2-egg omelet with peppers, onions, and baby spinach. And that typically works really well for me. And I usually have one piece of my homemade whole wheat bread to go with it in the morning. And yes, I did say I eat bread pretty much every morning. And I have been able to lose 70 pounds and maintain my weight by doing that. So it is something that at least I can do. You'll have to find out if you can do it for yourself. But a lot of that is just about being very intentional about what you eat and being very intentional about when you eat it and how much you eat. Because even a good thing, if you go overboard, ends up not being such a good thing. So after I get breakfast made, I typically go and get our coffee and that set and get the table set. And then I'll go in and wake up my sweetheart with a nice little back rub. I think she probably has the best alarm clock in the world, because I don't know too many people that have an alarm clock that rubs your back in the morning. But that is my way of showing appreciation to my sweetheart by getting breakfast going in the morning and waking her up with a nice gentle back rub. And then of course I gotta rub Lola's belly, because as soon as she wakes up, she rolls over, that's our little dog, and says, "I want a belly rub." So she gets her belly rub, and then I take her out to do her business in the morning, and then we have breakfast together. And that is typically my morning routine. This chapter is really, really short, so there's not a whole lot to talk about, because that's basically my routine. I start my morning with a little prayer and Bible study. I take care of my necessities, I take care of the necessities that I have to take care of in the morning, like every other human being, or at least like I would hope most of the human beings do, because hygiene is important, I think. I make breakfast for us, and then I wake up my wife, my sweetheart, with a nice back rub so that she can have her day started off almost as good as I did. Probably better, but hey. One of the other things that was on my mind this week is I keep hearing people say on social media, or I've heard doctors say before, that it is important to move more and eat less. And I really think they have that backwards. I know it is very important to move, but the impact that you'll have by eating less is such more profound. And since I've been using this Garmin app to track my calorie burnt, it's really, opened my eyes to that fact. This walk that I do, the very first time I did it, was 236 calories going for a 1-mile walk with a backpack with 70 pounds of lead in it. And yeah, that's probably a strange thing to do, but for me, it's a really good reminder of how much better I feel when I'm not carrying that extra 70 pounds around. Because one thing about losing weight, you do it so slow, sometimes you just don't see you don't feel the difference like you do when you drop a 70-pound backpack on the workbench like I do once a week here while I'm doing these videos for you. I do it as a good reminder to me, is to remind me that I don't ever want to be that heavy again. And then the second part, and really probably the more important part, is to hopefully motivate somebody out there or inspire somebody out there to find a healthy way. Like I said before, not necessarily my deciding for life way, but a healthy way to find a happier and healthier and yes, lighter lifestyle, because it is so much easier to do so many things when you're not carrying an extra 70 pounds around. And when I drop this backpack off, it really does remind me and does help me and help keep me motivated to continue doing and being very intentional about not gaining the weight back. But back to that moving more and eating less. You know, the other day I spent all day out here working on our sawmill, and then at the end of the day I went and trimmed some of our trees back and then drug all of the limbs over to a pile. And I got started probably about 9 or 9:30 in the morning, and I finished up at probably about 8:30 that night, getting done what I wanted to do. And the interesting thing is, with all that exertion and all of that work, you'd be really surprised that I only burned a little more than 1,000 calories more than what I would normally burn sitting and looking at a computer screen. Because when I sit down and edit these videos, I spend a good part of the day doing that, and I'll typically burn about 1,900 calories. Well, after spending all day out here, plus humping all the limbs over to a pile, I ended up burning a little more than 3,100 calories for the day. And when you sit down and think about that, that's 1,100 calories roughly, depending on how my average you base that out. But 1,100 or 1,200 calories, when you think about what you go and eat, you think about going to a fast food restaurant. How many meals can you eat at a fast food restaurant and them not be more than 1,200 or 1,300 calories? It's really astonishing that we're really not a lot heavier than we are when you sit down and think about what we really eat. You go to McDonald's and you get a meal. I guarantee you most of their meals are probably going to be at least 1,000 calories, especially if you throw a soda in there, because there's always a lot of calories in a soda. And then you got to think about, when you're looking at the calories that they talk about, they're probably talking about a small fry, a small drink, and I kind of wonder what they're using for their drinks. If it's actually, sugary soda or not. When they're putting their, meal calories up there. But it's really interesting to think, working outside all day in 90, 95 degree heat, and cutting lumber up with the sawmill, and then going around and cleaning up a bunch of the trees so I could mow the following day. It makes you really wonder, how you're really not a lot heavier than you are, because I only burned maybe 1,100 or 1,200 calories working outside all day long out in the heat. When you look at the context of this little walk, the very first time I did this, the Garmin said I burned 236 calories. And when you think about that, 236 calories is roughly 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. So I'm going for a 1-mile walk with 70 pounds of lead in a backpack and only burning the equivalent to 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Or, your typical small candy bar is about 240 calories. It's really interesting to think about when you put things in context like that. And when you put things in context like that, one of the other things that I do is I do a 20-minute body for run life. And according to the Garmin app, I typically burn about 200 calories doing a 20-minute run. And I don't know if you've ever done a body for life run, but it's basically 20 minutes in its intervals. You start out at a 5 for 2 minutes. You work up to a 6, a 7, an 8, and a 9. You drop back down to 6, back up through 9 in minute intervals. Drop down to 6, back up to 9 in 1 minute intervals again. And then the last time you go from 6 to 10 in 1 minute intervals. And then if I remember right, you have a 1 minute back at a 6. So, it's kind of a pretty intense, run. It seems pretty effective. But when you sit down and think about it, if I take that 20 minutes and I'm only burning 200 calories on average, that's less than 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. That's less than a candy bar. So do I really want to go and, do a 1 mile walk or, with 70 pounds of lead in the backpack to offset it, or only offset part of it by doing a 20-minute, run, in a Body for Lifestyle? When you sit down and think about, how much bigger an effect that controlling what you eat has over just controlling how much you move around and work out, it's really, the difference to me is really stark. I mean, a whole day of working out on my property here and only burning about 1,200 extra calories versus sitting at the computer, but it doesn't even offset going to McDonald's for me. It's really interesting because almost every time you hear somebody talk about moving more and eating less, the moving more usually comes first, or at least when I've heard people say it. And really, the funny thing about that is you can move an awful lot, but it's going to take an awful lot of moving to offset that Big Mac at McDonald's or the Whopper at Burger King, a lot more than you're probably really going to do, or at least more than I'm probably going to do. I do keep myself relatively busy, but on a day when I'm working on a computer, I'm typically only burning about 1,900 to 1,950 calories. And then when I go and work outside all day, I think the biggest number that I got was like 4,500 or 4,600 calories once when I was trimming the trees all day and doing that by hand. And that really kicked my butt for the whole day. But when you really put that context into perspective, it's kind of interesting because it takes an awful lot more moving to offset the little bit of effort it takes not to continue to put all that, high calorie carbohydrates in your body. And I do specifically talk about the carbs because, at least from what Body for Life teaches, it takes energy to burn or to break down proteins and fats that it doesn't take to take a complex carbohydrate and turn it into a sugar. And that's one of the things that impressed me with Body for Life, and it's one of the reasons I've used their system. But and it's one of the reasons that my system's based off of it, because I found it as something that does truly work. But I'm truly not the kind of guy that's going to work out 6 days a week all the time. I am going to start another regimen. I did that for about 15 weeks after I reached my goal and finished writing my book, just to see what the difference would be. And that's when it really opened my eyes about how much more important it is to control what I put in my mouth than it was to necessarily go for a walk, a regular walk, or let alone one with a backpack with 70 pounds of lead in it. Because to offset, going to McDonald's, I'm really not going to do it in a day. So if I really want to maintain my weight, I can't keep doing those things. I have to be intentional about what I eat. I've found that I can have one cheat day a week, and sometimes two if it's a holiday, and I can offset that pretty easily and keep my weight, within reason of what I want to be. I've been over 265 pounds before. I know what that feels like. I think it was 167 this morning. I write it down and put it in the computer, then I kind of forget about it. I just knew that when I looked at my numbers for this morning that I needed to maintain my system day pretty well. I didn't want to blow the week up. But that's what I really like about weighing myself daily and keeping track of it. It only takes a few minutes. And on top of that, when I find, when my scale's down because the internet's messed up or something, and I'm not looking at it every morning, I find it really easy to gain weight back then. Which is kind of, it's not funny, but it's kind of reality, because when you quit looking at it, you have a tendency to forget about it and then eat more than you probably should. So for me, at least, it's very important for me to weigh myself daily and see what the numbers are, because then that allows me to set my, intentions for the day, because then it makes it so much more easy to be very intentional about what I'm eating for the day, Whereas if I don't look at it closely, then I don't necessarily know, and it's pretty easy to see the weight start to creep back up. I decided to turn my watch on today to see if the calorie burn has changed any. So I'm gonna look at that when we get done with this walk today after we finish this mile, and I'll edit that information in so that you can see if it's changed much, because I'm kind of curious if, this being the 12th week that I've done this 1 mile woods walk with this 70 pounds of lead in the backpack, I'm curious if it's changed any. Now I know it is a bit hotter today than it was 12 weeks ago when I started this process, but I'm kind of curious to see if the calorie burn is going to be any different than it was that very first week. I know that very first week I did the first 1 mile without the 70 pounds in the backpack, just so I could go and see what path I wanted to walk, so that I didn't have to pay attention to hitting a mile when I'm trying to record the video. So and that time it burned 99 calories, just me walking around with no backpack on. And then it was 235 calories right afterwards when I did the walk with the 70-pound backpack. So 70-pound backpack equated to about 136 more calories than just walking without the backpack. And I've had some people comment about adding weight to going for their walks so they can burn a few more calories. And I think that's probably a good idea. I'm not a medical professional. I really can't say from a medical perspective, but to a layman it sounds like an idea that could at least be helpful. But when I sit down and look at the impact that that's going to have, 136 calorie impact to go for a 1 mile walk with a 70-pound backpack versus just not putting 200 calories worth of food in my mouth, or 230 calories worth of food in my mouth. When you really sit down and think about it, it is so much easier to not put the food in your mouth if you can create enough willpower and decide for your life and make a true decision that that's what you're going to do, so that you don't have to go and do all that extra working out just to burn off, fat from food that you shouldn't have ate in the first place. And yeah, I do have a cheat day. At least once a week on Sundays, I eat probably between 3,000 and maybe about 6,000 calories. But my body only absorbs so much of it on a cheat day, or at least that's what I think. And I'm able, because I'm constantly, losing weight through the week before my cheat day, and then I gain some back on my cheat day. And then, now that I've got my weight down, it's pretty much leveled out. I am up a little bit because the internet was being persnickety this last week. So until we got the new internet in, my scale wasn't keeping good track on my app, so I wasn't updating it in my notes. And it's funny because that's all it took to gain 4 or 5 extra pounds. So it's really, really important, at least for me, and if your personality's like mine, you may find the same thing. It might be more important to you to just weigh yourself once a week, or maybe you're the type of person that really shouldn't weigh themselves at all. So, it's kind of interesting, how food has an effect on you, and that's really what I'm spending some extra time here talking about, because my routine is really pretty simple, but the results are really what speak for themselves. I lost 70 pounds without working out and while still eating foods that I love. And I have what most people would consider a regular dinner every day. And I have a cheat day where I eat almost everything that I'd want to eat. We're back here to my shop, and I'm going to get rid of the backpack. We'll look at my watch and see what I can see. Oh, that does feel so awesome when I take that off. I really wish I could express that better. I wish I could, I wish I could articulate it better, because it does feel so much better when I take that off. Okay, that was 1.21 miles today, and it took me about 28 minutes, including setting up the app and having a little conversation. So I'm going to turn that off, and that was some interesting results. Today's walk, I walked 1.21 miles, And according to the Garmin app, I burned 175 calories, and it took me 28 minutes and 12 seconds to do the walk. 11 weeks ago, when I did the 1 mile walk with the 70-pound backpack, the Garmin app indicated that I walked 1.11 miles, burned 235 calories, and it took me 35 minutes and 57 seconds. So I threw all that information into Grok, which is AI, and it indicated that I've probably gotten a little bit used to carrying a 70-pound backpack around because my pace is a little faster and it didn't take quite as long. But one of the bigger insights to me, and it did say that the Garmin app could be a little bit off in, not calculating things perfectly, but it's still interesting to me that it went from 235 calories down to 175 calories. So that makes controlling what I put in my mouth that much more important, because before I was thinking I was burning up 235 calories to go for that 1 mile walk, and that would offset 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Well, guess what? It doesn't offset 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Thanks for watching. May you have an awesome and healthier and, yes, lighter day.